while you're scrolling through short contents, someone your age just made their first million. Now, the difference isn't talent or luck. It's where they spend their time on what I call the focus map, the theme of today's video. The next 5 years of your life will determine everything. The focus map isn't just about productivity. It's about who you become. According to Dr. Gloria Mark's research from UC Irvine, Gen Z can focus for only 47 seconds before getting distracted. Over the course of this documentary, I've studied the neuroscience behind focus through experts, peer-reviewed studies, and frameworks used by people who became legends of their own industries. What I discovered is a systematic approach that makes anyone achieve laser focus. Assume this is a focus map where Q1 is the endless scroller, Q2 is the consumer, Q3 is the experimenter, and Q4 is the peak performer. Now, this creates 4 quadrants, 4 types of people. The quadrants help you identify your starting point, and they're designed from the perspective of improving the quality of your work so that your career moves forward. But it begins with this video. Quadrant 1, the endless scroller. If you're in quadrant 1, you know the cycle. You open your phone to check something, and 3 hours later, you're watching some random brain rot. The best outcome of such a situation is you just sending your best found reels and shorts to your best friend. How much value does that add to your career? The solution is not willpower. The solution is about having clarity about your biology and your subjective reality. Out of the 24 hours that you have, your brain has a specific time when it can work at 100% capacity, your most productive period of the whole day. This is called biological prime time. Most people waste this window scrolling through or sitting through classes that they've mentally checked out of. But once you find it, everything changes. Maybe your peak is at 6 a.m. before the world wakes up. Maybe it's at 11 p.m. when everyone's asleep. The exact time does not matter, but finding it does. The only key when it comes to having a productive life is knowing yourself, knowing what works for your body and your mind. True for myself at the start of my content creation journey, where I'd wake up at 1 p.m. and sleep at sometimes 6 a.m. every day, but I'd be highly productive in my waking hours. Not the healthiest way to live, not what I recommend. The key is to simply understand yourself and, more importantly, understand your peak 90-minute window. The science behind this is fascinating. Sleep researchers have discovered that our brains operate in what they call ultradian rhythms, natural cycles of alertness and fatigue that occur throughout the day. Try thinking about what your ultradian rhythm is. Remember, these cycles last between 90 to 120 minutes. Now, this is your escape plan from quadrant 1. Firstly, identify your 90-minute peak window. Look for when you can sit with one task without your mind wandering. Not when you're the most productive, but when you're the most present. At what time of the day does this happen for you? Note it down. Next, practice focused attention meditation for 10 minutes daily. Scientific reports found that even brief meditation strengthens the neural circuits responsible for sustained focus. In the long term, meditation improves connectivity in the parts of your brain linked to attention. Next, optimize your sleep schedule for 7 to 8 hours of high quality sleep. Studies show that even mild sleep deprivation reduces your attention span by up to 40%. Your peak window depends on quality rest to restore neurotransmitters like dopamine and acetylcholine. These are essential for your focus levels throughout the day. But when you find that window, that's your escape route from quadrant 1. Quadrant 2, the consumer. Now, we all know that one person who's actually knowledgeable but hasn't built much in life. You know, that one cinephile friend of yours who criticizes your favorite films Or that one business bro who consumes every business podcast but hasn't sold a single thing in his life. This is a normal part of growing up. In fact, great growth often begins from a place of arrogance, knowing that you're slightly better than the rest. The trick is to not get stuck just at that level, breaking through. You know something about everything, but maybe you've not really built anything yet. You might be stuck in quadrant 2. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman's research reveals something very interesting about this exact pattern. When we consume information, our brain releases dopamine in anticipation of using that knowledge. But if we never act on it, we get stuck in what researchers call pseudo-productivity. The feeling of progress without any actual progress being a part of your reality. Our brain needs 3 chemicals working together to shift from consuming to creating. Dopamine for motivation, epinephrine for alertness, and acetylcholine to filter out distractions. Here's how you break out of quadrant 2. Firstly, apply the 90-20 rule during the peak window. 90 minutes of peak work and then 20 minutes of rest. Set a timer for your peak 90 minutes and pick one thing to build, not consume. While we recommend 90 minutes of deep work, your natural rhythm might be anywhere between 90 to 120 minutes. Find what feels right for you. Learn to pace yourself well for higher productivity. Next, use the visual focus primer before starting. Stare at a fixed point for 30 seconds. That staring exercise triggers acetylcholine production, literally sharpening your ability to focus on what matters while ignoring what doesn't. Time your caffeine strategically. For high focus levels, it's a wise decision to consume 100 to 200 mg of caffeine around 30 minutes before your peak window to really enhance that window. That's about 1 or 2 cups of coffee about half an hour before you begin your high focus work, which then proceeds to boost your epinephrine levels. Next, experiment with 40 Hz binaural beats. Now, these are special audio tracks that play slightly different frequencies in each ear. This creates a pulsing rhythm that your brain synchronizes with. So listen to them for 20 minutes during work sessions. It basically helps you think more clearly and think quicker if you get into the practice. Next, connect to your purpose before creating. Remind yourself why this task matters for your future. This primes dopamine, making creative work feel worth it rather than just another obligation that you're going through for the sake of your career. This shift from quadrant 2 to quadrant 3 might feel uncomfortable at first. It's probably the most difficult jump of them all because creating is obviously much harder than consuming. But this is where real progress begins. Side note, it's also the golden rule for every single content creator who stayed relevant over the years. They all create more than you consume, and the same is true for every entrepreneur that I've ever met. You've gotta ask yourself at some point, how long are you just going to keep consuming content for? If you want to make yourself feel better by saying that you don't consume content but you read books and you consume courses, I have the same question that I repeat to you. How long are you just going to keep studying for? You've got to be real with yourself at some point. And then we can move on to quadrant number 3. Now, what is quadrant 3? You're basically high on creativity. You're definitely creating more than you consume. You're trying to be productive, but your focus levels are not where they should be yet. This is usually where a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves in the first year of running their business. This is where a lot of self-made individuals find themselves when their careers just begin. And I assure you, you're going to have to keep revisiting quadrant 3 regularly in your life. Every time you're trying to reinvent, every time you're trying to build something from scratch, you've got to spend some time here, which is why it's very peculiar. In quadrant 2, focus levels were high, but you weren't creating anything. You were absorbing information. In quadrant 3, you've absorbed information, but you're trying to experiment. Your focus levels are not high in one particular domain.
Going forward, this chapter is going to contain one of the most important lessons that any artist, any entrepreneur, any type A personality needs to learn in life. We've started multiple YouTube channels, multiple profitable businesses, seen so many failures as well, which we don't talk about publicly. But the massive learning was that before any big venture, any big project begins, you're going to have to spend some time in Quadrant 3 for an extended period of time to study, to accumulate data, to allow your creativity to work itself, to share your ideas with your friends and family, receive feedback, shape up your game plan better. That's what Quadrant 3 is about.
Every single business coach that I've brought on the podcast, every single stalwart that I have spoken to over the course of the last 6 years, they've told me that to really make it big in this world, you've got to go deep in one domain, possibly with one core skill. That's the trick. That's how big money is made. That's how big progress is made. But all of these journeys begin in Quadrant 3 where you're experimenting, where you're dabbling a little bit, where you can't apply the power of focus because it's the nature of growth. Even the best of the best very often find themselves in Quadrant 3, and true success is found between Quadrant 3 and 4. You've got to bounce in between. For example, I'm going to be super vulnerable here, but I'm in the process of reinvention right now. I'm trying to redo how my content is done. I'm currently in Quadrant 3. The solution is learning to enter beast mode, the flow state. Remember that the most defining career moments, whether it's for an athlete, an entrepreneur, a writer, an actor, an artist, the biggest life-changing moments happen in the flow state, where you don't know how you're able to create what you're creating. You know that whatever you're writing, whatever you're building, that's going to pay the bills in the long term. You're doing your life's groundbreaking work. But what's heartbreaking is that it's not easy to enter flow state regularly. Flow happens when 3 conditions align perfectly. When the challenge matches our skill level, when we get immediate feedback on our progress, and when we have one crystal clear goal. Here's the fascinating part. Flow is not random, it's predictable. And it typically begins around 15 to 20 minutes into focused work. Once your brain stops scanning the environment for threats and fully commits itself to the task at hand. During flow states, our brain releases a cocktail of performance-enhancing chemicals. It's like your brain is getting itself kind of high. Norepinephrine for focus, dopamine for motivation, anandamide for creative thinking, and endorphins for persistence. This is why flow feels so good. We're literally optimizing our brain chemistry for peak performance. And that peak performance in the long term, every time you regularly visit it, builds up your careers. Therefore, the goal is to engineer flow in Quadrant 3. This is how we suggest you go about it. Firstly, calibrate the challenge level precisely. Choose something slightly above your comfort zone, not overwhelming, but challenging enough that you have to think and grow. This is what researchers call the challenge skill balance. Too easy and your brain gets bored, too hard and anxiety kicks in. Next, create immediate feedback loops. If you're coding, run the program and see if it works every 15 minutes. If you're writing, watch the word count grow in real time. If you're learning, quiz yourself and track improvements. If you're working around a teammate, pitch your work to your teammate to get immediate verbal feedback. Because flow requires seeing progress instantly. Next, respect the 20-minute flow entry rule. Expect the first 15 minutes of your flow state to feel a little slow. This is normal. This is your brain still scanning the environment, checking for threats and distractions, because flow usually kicks in at around 20 minutes. Once your mind fully commits to the task, don't break this transition period. Don't get up for anything else. Stay in your flow state and move your life forward. The next bullet when it comes to the flow state, Warm up with 10 minutes of yoga or Tai Chi. Harvard studies show that these mind body exercises enhance cognitive flexibility and executive function. Even brief movement practices improve focus duration by synchronizing mind body awareness before cognitive work. A simple yoga based technique that you can try right now is a basic breathing exercise called Anulom Vilom, where you're basically breathing from one nostril at a time, taking it in, holding it for a bit, and then breathing out through the other nostril. 5 minutes of Anulom Vilom just makes your brain still, and it's a fantastic exercise to calm your mind down before high powered work. High creation meets high focus. And this is where real builders live. At this point, you've found your peak hours. You've redirected your focus to creation. You are now able to enter flow states on command. You're building consistently, but here's where most people might fail. They burn out. And this is natural. You're doing everything right during your 90-minute blocks, but you're not sustaining it. You'll have an amazing week and then crash for 2 weeks. You're in quadrant 4 sometimes, but not consistently. The final pieces are recovery and reinforcement. This is what separates people who build lasting momentum from those who start and stop. Every time you focus deeply, you burn through specific brain chemicals. Think of it like a high-performance car after racing. The engine needs to cool down and refuel. Here's what top performers understand. Recovery isn't about distraction, it's about restoration. So you can access that same peak state again tomorrow. Now here's how you sustain your presence in quadrant 4. Firstly, practice NSDR or Yoga Nidra, non-sleep deep rest after work blocks. Lie down for 10 to 20 minutes with your eyes shut. No phone, no stimulation. Just breathe. 15 minutes of putting your body and mind through NSDR can pay off as much as a few hours of sleep if you do it right. Next, use strategic cold exposure. You can choose to splash cold water on your face or take a 30-second cold shower after work sessions. This activates your vagus nerve, which helps regulate your entire nervous system. It's like switching from work mode to recovery mode instantly. Studies show that cold exposure also increase norepinephrine, enhancing focus for hours after the cold exposure. Next, take 15 to 20 minute walks outdoors. Research from the University of Victoria show that outdoor walks, more than indoor walks, increase the P300 brainwaves associated with attention and working memory. This combination of light movement and exposure to nature helps your body shift from the stress of concentration towards a relaxed state while processing what you've just learned. Next, time your nutrition strategically. Eat protein-rich meals 2 to 3 hours before peak sessions to provide sustained energy without blood sugar spikes. Avoid heavy carbohydrates that cause energy crashes. Stay hydrated. Even 2% dehydration reduces cognitive performance by 23%. Your brain depends on optimal fuel for its peak functioning. Next, build your evidence stack systematically. After each 90-minute block, write one sentence about what you just proved to yourself. I stayed in my flow state for my entire peak window. I built something real instead of just consuming. Over time, these observations paint a picture of someone who shows up consistently. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to reach quadrant 4, and you start recognizing yourself as someone who lives there. Now, this is what I wish to leave you with at the end of this session. The next 5 years of your life will determine everything. The focus map isn't just about productivity, it's about who you become when you consistently choose staying in quadrant 4. Your peak hours exist whether you find them or not. Your brain is ready for flow states whether you access them or not. The map is here. The path is now clear. What you do next changes everything.